Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and I'll be taking you through today's battle report between the Sylvaneth and the Corvus Cabal. This murder bird made a huge mistake taking this box of shiny things from the tree folk. With the Sylvaneth Hunter in hot pursuit, the Shrike Talon fled to the ruins and the sanctuary of his bell tower where he would try and hold on to his stolen treasure. As the Sylvaneth slowly surrounded him, he put out a cry to his fellow murder birds to help him secure the prize. The warbands assembled and it was time for battle, and with our first warband, the Sylvaneth, they're being led by the Sylvaneth Huntmaster with Sylvaneth Scythe, and the Corvus Cabal are being led by the Shadow Piercer. For the Sylvaneth shield, we've got the Huntmaster leading the way with one Spite Revenant and one Tree Revenant. In the hammer, we got the Sylvaneth Hunter with one Spite Revenant and one Tree Revenant. For the dagger, we've got the Sylvaneth Hunter with Great Bow, and for the hero choice for the warband, they're bringing in the Scion. For the Corvus Cabal in their shield, it's the Shadow Piercer leading the way with two Cabalists with spears. In the hammer, we have the Shrike Talon, a Cabalist with Familiar, and a Cabalist. And for the dagger, we have two Spire Stalkers and one Cabalist. Our leaders roll off to see who's going to get priority, and they both roll a 3, so they roll again, 2 for Sylvaneth, and it's a 3 for the Corvus Cabal, and the Corvus Cabal take priority. We didn't use any terrain cards for the setup. Instead, we laid out the terrain in a way that we thought looked really great and matched the victory card. The deployment is Defiant Stand, the victory is Vantage Point, and the twist is Eager for the Fight. As they flee to the bell tower, the Corvus Cabal choose to deploy in the blue zones. With deployment and terrain set up, it's time to resolve the victory card, and we didn't choose at random. We picked something to fit the storyline, and this is called Vantage Point. Seize the high ground that we might then seize victory. The players roll off, and the winner places one objective on a platform at least 6 inches vertically above the battlefield floor. If there are no platforms that high, the player instead places one objective on a platform that is at least 3 inches vertically above the battlefield floor and within 12 inches horizontally of the centre of the battlefield. The battle ends after 3 rounds. When the battle ends, the player that controls the objective wins the battle. The Corvus Cabal win the roll-off and choose to place the objective, and they place it right at the top of that bell tower, a nice high position to take advantage of their tactics. Now it's time to resolve the twist, and this is Eager for the Fight. Both warbands hunger for glory and race headlong into battle with frenzied howls. Add 1 to the move characteristic of all fighters this battle. This extra movement's really going to help the Sylvaneth to catch up and get in on that objective. So now let's move on and set up those battle groups. The hammer, shield and dagger are all going to come in at round 1, and you can see here that we've got the deployment zones all marked out, and the Corvus Cabal are placing their fighters first, making sure they're wholly within 3 inches of those deployment points. With the shield set up, it's now time for the hammer, and here we've got the Shrike Talon leading the hammer, and then we've got the Spire Stalkers setting up with that Cabalist for the dagger. Then the Sylvaneth with their shield, then their hammer, and then finally their dagger. With the battle groups all in place, it's time to begin the battle, so let's get started with round 1. It's the hero phase. The Corvus Cabal roll, they get 1 double, another double and 2 singles, and then the Sylvaneth roll, and let's see what they get. They roll 5, 1 more dice to come, and they're going to get a double and 4 singles. So right away the Sylvaneth get the initiative, and they're going to choose to use their wild dice to make that double a triple, and the Corvus Cabal are going to take their wild dice and make one of their doubles a triple. The Sylvaneth keep the initiative and go first, and it's the Sylvaneth Hunter with Great Bow, just checking that range with a huge range of 20. He's well in range and chooses to attack. Straight away we get our first crit and 1 hit, and he attacks again with another hit. So with 1 crit and 2 hits, that's a nice early on 9 points of damage there, going to our Shadow Piercer, and that ends the activation for the Kurnoth Hunter. The Shadow Piercer calls across the battlefield to the Shrike Talon to bring him into action, and with that huge movement of 8 plus the extra for the twist, he soon gets across the battlefield in 2 moves and then uses the triple ability Swooping Attack for 1 extra movement. And because he ends that movement 3 inches lower than when he started, he gets a bonus attack. Just rolls to check for damage first though, and he does take 1 little damage point there. But with 5 attacks going against this Kurnoth Hunter, he makes 2 hits, and that's going to give a nice 4 points of damage to the Kurnoth Hunter and end the activation for the Shrike Talon. The Scion spies an opportunity to have a little poke at the Shrike Talon here, so just measures up, comes around, gets well within that 1 inch range, and he's going to make the first attack with 3 misses, but we get a hit, and that 1 hit is going to give an extra 2 points of damage. But he's not done yet. He uses his triple ability, Walk the Spirit Path, and this is going to allow him to disappear and reappear anywhere on the battlefield as long as he's 5 inches away from any enemy fighters. And here we can see him appearing, taking cover behind the building there, the ruins, and that's going to end his activation. The Shadow Piercer wants to put more pressure on that Kurnoth Hunter, so pushes forward her Cabalist, who uses 2 move actions to get within base contact, ready for the next round to make some attacks, and that's going to end the activation for this Cabalist. The Sylvaneth leader, the Huntmaster with Great Sigh, is going to use both his move actions to get as close as he can towards the stairs there to move up on the objective, ends his activation. And then we've got one of the Corvus Cabals here, just measuring up for a little bit of movement. This is the Cabalist with Familiar, and she's going to end her activation on top of the platform. The Kurnoth Hunter with Greatsword is going to use 2 move actions to get as close as he can to that Shrike Talon to give a little bit of backup to the Kurnoth Hunter with Great Bow and stop that Shrike Talon doing too much damage. And now we've got another one of the Cabalists just making a measurement there, and again more pressure piling on now as they end their activation within range, and they just roll to see if they've taken any damage from that little drop there, and they do. They take 1 damage, but they're not done. They use their double ability, the Dart, and roll in a 5, gives a little bit extra damage on that Kurnoth Hunter, and they end their activation. We've got a little battle mounting up on the edge of the board now as the Scion measures up 2 move actions, again trying to get in close and come around the back of the Shrike Talon there, and they end their activation. Determined to bring down this Kurnoth Hunter with Great Bow, one of the Spire Stalkers measures up, and they're going to look to move along, climb down, and then get closer to the battle and try and get in the way of that Hunter with Greatsword before ending their activation. Now it's time for one of the Tree Revenants to make a move. With 2 move actions, they're heading towards the objective and looking to sneak up the back there and take out one of the Corvus Cabal, ending their activation. Now the Shadow Piercer looking to get close enough within range of a good number of crows so she can use her ability later on, ends her activation there. And it's another Spite Revenant moving in, going round the side, putting pressure on that Cabalist and ending their activation too. Our second Spire Stalker just looks to use 1 move action just to get away from the stairs there, just edges back, making sure they can stay out of range, ending their activation. And we've got another Tree Revenant taking another route, again putting the pressure on now. They're coming in a nice line of attack, ending their activation. And we've got a Cabalist again retreating. They're not having any of that, and they move up to replace the spot where the Spire Stalker was stood and end their activation there too. And that's the end of Battle Round 1, and we can see that the Sylvaneth straight away wanted to make use of the Kurnoth Hunter with Great Bow and that range, and he took some shots against the Shadow Piercer. But then after that he was just swamped, and we can see that we've got the Shrike Talon, the Shadow Piercer, and then 1, 2, 3 Cabalists and Spire Stalkers all swamping him, really putting the pressure on, looking to take him out early on. That range could really do some damage while they try and secure the objective here. Then we saw the Kurnoth Hunter with Greatsword moving in with the Spite Revenant, looking to come in and attack the Shrike Talon there. And then meanwhile, across the other side of the battlefield, we had that great move by the Scion, who transferred himself right across the battlefield to join these 3 fighters here and the leader, and they're all going to put pressure and start to move towards the objective in the second round. But then the Corvus Cabal held back really trying to draw the Sylvaneth Hunter to the fight and his fighters. And if you can see here, we've got 4 of them all perched high up, taking the high ground. But don't forget this guy here as well. There's a 5th Sylvaneth coming in, and so there really could be some pressure coming on that objective in round 2. It's time for the round 2 hero phase, and the Corvus Cabal roll. They get 1 double, they get another double and 2 singles, and then the Sylvaneth roll, and they're going to get a double, and again they get 4 singles, so they get the initiative and decide to use their wild dice to make one of those singles a double, and they've gone for the highest value, the double 6. The Corvus Cabal use a wild dice to make that triple 4. And so the Sylvaneth are going to go first, and straight away the Sylvaneth Hunter with great bow eyes up the Spire Stalker with 2 attacks. He gets 1 crit and 1 hit, and that's going to give a decent amount of damage there, 7 points of damage. But he's not done yet. He wants to have a go at that Shrike Talon, and so uses his double ability, the Trample Underfoot, and with that 6 he can roll 6 dice, and let's see how many hits he gets. A whopping 4 hits, and that's going to put 4 points on that Shrike Talon. A nice little sneaky attack there at the end before he ends his activation. And now it's time for the Corvus Cabal to retaliate, and the Shrike Talon's getting stuck in. No messing around with those 5 attack dice. We're straight in with 2 critical hits, and he's going to take a second attack for his second action. And whoa, this is really mounting up now. We've got a total of 5 crits and 1 hit. Let's see what that does. 21 points of damage, 22 points of damage, and ends his activation. That Sylvaneth Hunter's just barely hanging on. The Huntmaster sees the power of this Shrike Talon and moves in for the attack, getting within 1 inch, and he's going to roll 4 dice, and he gets 1 crit and 1 hit, and let's see what damage that's going to do. That's going to be 7 points of damage in total, and that's going to end his activation. And now the next one is our Shadow Piercer, and she just moves out of the fray a little bit, but still within range to use an ability later on. She's going to make an attack on that Hunter and deal some damage, but he's still in the fight on 28 wounds. But she's now going to use her triple ability, Grizzly Trophy, and this is going to give some extra power to her fellow fighters before she ends her activation. The Spite Revenant sees a chance to attack the Shrike Talon as well, moves within range, and he's going to have a nice 4 attacks, and this is pretty good. 1 critical hit and 2 hits, and is that enough to take out the Shrike Talon? No, 5 points of damage, he's still in the fight, that ends his activation. The Corvus Cabal now retaliate, and it's the Cabalist with Spear, and he's going to have a go, determined to get rid of this Sylvaneth Hunter, and he ends up with a pretty decent attack there. Is this enough to see him off? And it is. The Sylvaneth Hunter with great bow is out of the battle. He can't take any more hits, and he's removed from the battlefield. A great attack there by our Cabalist with Spear, who also has a move action and retreats, moving towards the objective before ending the activation. After that great move across the battlefield in the previous round, the Scion is now going to do a little bit of climbing to get within range of this Cabalist with Familiar. And then he's also going to get 1 attack now, and he gets a hit. That's not going to do too much damage. Just 2 points of damage to our Cabalist with Familiar, but enough to make his presence known before ending his activation. And now it's the turn of the Corvus Cabal, and they're just measuring up here, looking to do some kind of sneaky move. And this is the Spire Stalker now retreating from that battle and moving to get in the way of the Hunter with Sai. And the Hunter with Sai is now going to retaliate, and he's going to move straight in, keep him within 2 inches, so he doesn't have to make a disengage action next turn, and use his second action to make an attack, and that's 3 hits. And let's see, there's going to be a fair amount of damage here. That's going to be 9 points of damage, and he ends his activation. Lots of moving around now as our Cabalist with Familiar disengages, pulls back an inch or 2, and then jumps down to get in the way of this oncoming line of offense. And she doesn't take any falling damage here, so she's safe. And then she's going to end her activation and block the way of those oncoming threats. But this guy, the Spite Revenant, can get around there, and he's going to get straight into base contact with our Spire Stalker. And with 1 extra action left, he's going to use a double ability for Onslaught, adding 1 extra attack. Good job he did, because he only got 1 hit, but it's a critical hit, dealing 3 points of damage to the Spire Stalker and ends his activation. Now it's the turn of the Spire Stalker, who's just measuring up to see if he can get within 1 movement range of that tree revenant there, and he can, so he jumps down, then uses the remaining inches from this move action to get close enough for an attack. He has to take falling damage, so he rolls 2, he's perfectly safe, and now he's going to make an attack on the tree revenant, but he's going to use a double ability, the onslaught, for 1 extra roll here, 1 extra attack roll, and he gets 2 hits and a crit. His strength's 4 against toughness 3, so he does some damage there. 8 points of damage, and that's enough to take the tree revenant out of the battle, so he's removed from the battlefield. It's good night for him, and that's a great round for this guy, the Spire Stalker, who ends his activation. The Sylvaneth really want to get some pressure on that objective, so our tree revenant disengages and then moves towards the ladder with his second action, and he's going to get up halfway up that ladder there, or a little way up, and start putting some pressure on the Corvus Cabal on the top, and staying in position there, he's going to end his activation. Now the Corvus Cabal are going to move forward and try and take on the Scion. They get within range, make a roll, nothing, no damage points at all there, and they end their activation. And with just the Corvus Cabal left to move, it's the turn of the Cabalist, who makes a 3-inch disengage, and then can use the rest of their actions to make a move, end their activation, getting closer to that objective. And here you can see, now we're just measuring up to see how far we've got to go to get to that objective. And this little one, he's going to come down, the Cabalist, and get within range, getting a little bit too close to the Sylvaneth there. And he's going to make an attack. It's 4 dice, we get a critical hit and a hit. So a little bit of damage going on. Is this enough to take him out? No, just 4 points of damage. He's still in the game, and that ends the activation for the Corvus Cabal, and that brings us to the end of round 2. So after round 2, the Sylvaneth Hunter with Great Bow was taken out, and then the Corvus Cabal started moving back towards the objective up here, and with their extra movement they can really cover some great ground. As we saw in round 1 with the Shrike Talon making that move, he's going to look to come all the way back in round 3 and get back on the objective. Maybe he's even going to come and look to block the Kurnoth Great Huntmaster here coming in. And so they really took out and drew a lot of attention to this side of the battlefield, and they've tied up both these fighters here who had to come in and do something. But meanwhile, the Sylvaneth have been advancing. The Great Huntmaster with the Great Sai there is moving up. We've got some of the different revenants, one up on the perch now, trying to take some attention away from that objective and draw the Corvus Cabal Cabalist here and here as well. We've got the stairs, lots of activity building up on the stairs there, so they're going to want to try and clear that so that then they can move up. So going into round 3, the Sylvaneth have got it all to play for. It's looking quite good for the Corvus Cabal. They've also got a fighter here who you can't see, and so they can move a lot of fighters back in towards that objective. We can even disengage here and come back, and that Shrike Talon's going to probably look to disengage, come in too. And again here, even the Shadow Piercer can come out. So, there's lots of movement going to be happening in round 3, and let's see what happens. It's the round 3 hero phase, and the Sylvaneth go first. They get a double and 4 singles, and wow, they're really holding on to the initiative this whole game. And then it's time for the Corvus Cabal, who get a triple and 3 singles. So with the wild dice, the Sylvaneth make one of those singles a double, and the Corvus Cabal decide to steal the initiative by making another single. And they're straight in with the Shrike Talon, who makes a disengage action, makes sure he's not within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, and then uses his next action to do a little bit of climbing, getting closer to that objective and as close as he can. But he's not finished yet. He's using this real nice triple ability, the swooping attack, and he's going to make one more move action. He's got that huge 8 range, and he's cleverly going to walk down the steps so he doesn't have to jump and take the risk of any falling damage. And then that's going to put him close enough to this tree revenant to make an attack, and so he can make this bonus attack because of where he's landed. And while he's straight in, 2 critical hits and a hit. That's got to be enough to take out this fighter, and it certainly is. It's game over for the tree revenant as he's removed from the battlefield. And what a great round and a great battle for the Shrike Talon, who's really making use of those abilities. The Sylvaneth have to clear a path to those steps, so the Huntmaster takes action, and he's going to attack the Spire Stalker, and he's in with a great roll there. He's got 2 hits and 1 critical hit, and let's see what damage that does. A huge 11 points, and that's going to take the Spire Stalker out of the game, and this is the first casualty for the Corvus Cabal, and that's a great move for the Huntmaster, who's also now going to move closer and try and perch himself on the step. He's a little bit big, but he's hanging on, and he's going to use his ability, the Trample Underfoot Double, and he's going to roll 5 dice, and let's see if he does any damage there. He certainly does. There's 3 points of damage going on the Cabalist, and he ends his activation. We're getting close to the end of the battle now, and the Spire Stalker knows they're running out of time, so they measure up and they can climb right up to the objective, and they're right on the objective now, but leaving enough room on that platform for some other fighters before ending their activation. Now it's time for the Sylvaneth to make an attack, and let's see what they do. Oh, the Spite Revenant's been a bit sneaky here, doing a little climb up behind the steps and gets close, so he's within 3 inches of the objective there, so these Corvus Cabal have got to look out, and he ends his activation. The Cabalist with Spear doesn't like the look of this threat from the Spite Revenant, so moves up and gets within range for an attack. And with the 1 attack there, they get 4 rolls. That's a pretty decent roll with 2 hits, 1 critical hit. That's going to put a nice 6 points of damage on the Spite Revenant, and they're going to end their activation there. And so that was a great move. And now let's look at what the Sylvaneth do next. And the Great Hunter is measuring up. He's in range of one of the Cabalists, and so moves up for the attack, and he's pretty strong here, pretty fierce with that roll. He gets 4 attacks, that's 4 hits, causing a decent amount of damage, 8 points of damage, and that's enough to take this Cabalist out of the game as he's removed from the battlefield, and the Hunter ends his activation. That sneaky move by the Spite Revenant has shook up the Corvus Cabal a little bit, and now this one's going to look to come round the back, climb up the bell tower and join the Spire Stalker at the top, and with these 2 move actions plus the extra movement characteristics from the twist, he can certainly do that. And now he's perched at the top, and the Corvus Cabal have got 2 fighters on the objective, and he ends his activation. It's the turn of the Tree Revenant, and if they can get this Cabalist out of the way, they could actually put a bit more pressure on, and going straight in for the universal ability Double Onslaught. They now get 5 dice to roll in attack, and wow, it's 2 critical hits and a hit, and with 10 points of damage they take the Cabalist out of the game. He's removed from the battlefield, and they've still got a move action for this, this is the Scion, so he's still got a move action, and he can get close enough to be within 3 inches of that objective too. So out of the blue, there's now some pressure mounting on the Corvus Cabal, and so this other fighter now, he's going to try and copy the previous Cabalist, and with those 2 move actions, he's going to climb to the top of the bell tower, and with 3 of them just about perched up there, they're going to hold on to that objective. It's now 3 fighters against 2, and it's really close here now as we near the end of Battle Round 3 and the end of the battle. Now it's the turn of the Spite Revenant, and he's just looking to stay out of the way. No sense in getting injured at this late stage when he doesn't have to. He can't get near the objective, so ends his activation. And the Shadow Piercer, she's going to just climb to the top, get a nice perch on top of the ruins, and she's going to see out the rest of the battle there before she ends her activation. And that brings us to the end of the battle, the end of Battle Round 3, and so let's take a close look at the objective and see who's won. So we can see here that the Sylvaneth actually got 2 fighters within 3 inches of the objective, but the Corvus Cabal, with those long movements, managed to get 3 fighters right above it, and so they take the victory. And the Kurnoth Hunters took 3 casualties during the battle, and so did the Corvus Cabal. But even though the Kurnoth Great Huntmaster put up a great fight, it wasn't enough to take down the Corvus Cabal, and the Shadow Piercer is the leader who's taken the victory home today. A great win for the Corvus Cabal against the Sylvaneth, but maybe a couple more rounds and it could have gone either way. But overall, a great victory here for the Shadow Piercer, and the Sylvaneth have got a long walk home. I hope you enjoyed the battle report between these 2 awesome warbands. I really love the Corvus Cabal. They're my favourite Warcry warband out of all of them, and the Sylvaneth are up there too. But thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. If you like this kind of content and would like to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks to everyone who's joined so far. It's really awesome. We hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, share ideas and help each other out, and you'll get some perks there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description, and it'd be great to see you there.